On today's episode, we are going to take a look at liberation. So from our previous episodes on the 4 goals of life, we have covered, the goals of life being wealth, pleasure, righteousness, and today's episode, the 4th goal, liberation. Now, me saying 4th goal doesn't mean it is the goal that comes at the end of life, because as stated in our introduction as well as in the previous episodes, we can look at it broadly to say that the goals of life apply to, life in general, that we put life into 4 stages, and we say, that we have the stage of being a student, we have the householder stage where we pursue pleasure and wealth, student stage, righteousness, all to the life, righteousness. And then the 4th stage, we can say that we pursue, or focus rather, on liberation. Now, the thought that I put forward was that we can look at it like that, but because there's no guarantee in life, there's no guarantee that we are going to reach old age, there's no guarantee that we are going to, let's say, acquire any great amount of wealth or have any exceptional forms of pleasure in life, that maybe we should be looking at it microscopically, that we should be considering every single situation in life as being that there are 4 goals, or there are 4 things that we can derive from those situations. So every situation, every circumstance, that we can acquire a certain amount of wealth from those situations. And in our previous episode, we defined what I mean by wealth. We can derive a certain amount of pleasure, and there's a way that I explained that we can derive pleasure from each and every single situation. And we can, by a definition of what righteousness is, act accordingly in every single situation. And now we come to the point of liberation, which is something that we tend to define as leaving the world, whether it's by death or whether it's by through long, tedious, yogic discipline, that we become detached from the world. Now, this is where we start in defining what we mean by liberation. Because I think the definition of liberation applies to human beings. I don't mean that we are going to apply a definition to animals and plants. But what I mean is that we created this definition to symbolize what we consider to be a liberated stage. So we want to be liberated from the stresses of life, or liberated from having to suffer through disease and through poverty and these kind of things. But I think as a principle of life, as one of the goals of life, and life being across the board in the entire universe, life exists as the lives of planets, the lives of stars, the lives of plants and animals and people, that it must be universally applicable. So when we say liberation, when we liberate ourselves, we situate ourselves, our minds, our psyche in a place where basically we realize where we are in the universe. And I put it in that way, I phrase it in that way to mean that the opposite of being liberated is being, let's say, bound to our identity. So let me define the opposite of it, and probably that way you'll see what I mean by being liberated, which is when an individual becomes egotistical, when they become so engrossed and so absorbed in themselves as their physical body. So no regard for their mental state, no regard for their psyche, no regard for anything beside what I am as a physical human being. So my occupation, my appearance, my heritage, my wealth, my physical wealth. When we become so engrossed, we believe that everything centers around us, and that everything, in a way, is focused on us. So that even we might think that, this is really going off into the deep parts of being egotistical, but when somebody is so engrossed in their own ego that they feel that even the people around them exist to serve them. So the opposite of that, or being liberated, I think, is realizing that the world we live in and our existence on the whole, that nothing centers around us. Everything exists as is. And what I mean is that it's not that our family exists to support us. We exist, and that's it. And this is the part about liberation. This is where we begin to define being liberated is becoming aware that the circumstances that we are in don't exist for us. They simply exist. That if we were not in that circumstance, in all probability, will still happen. And that us being there, or us taking part, only really affects you as an individual, me. So me experiencing something, or me experiencing a relationship, or having a particular thing, or occupying a certain position, all these things only really affect my life, me. It doesn't, if I wasn't there, it'll just happen to somebody else. It'll just occur some other time. It's not like it only occurs because you exist or I exist. So this is what I think that goal of life comes in, of being liberated. It's having the understanding that you are free to enjoy life without feeling that you are bound to it. So it's not about, let's say, throwing all caution to the wind and giving up and not caring about anything. It's realizing that it doesn't matter the situation you're in, or the position you're in, or the life you have, physical, material, I'm talking about. All these things will occur to everyone else in equal amount. It will occur at different times. It will happen. So there's nothing binding you in particular to that situation. And that is the liberating part about it. That frees up you and your mind to enjoy it fully, to derive whatever wealth you want to derive from a particular situation, to derive whatever pleasure you want without feeling guilty that you are somehow enjoying all this pleasure, and to act righteously. The liberation part of it frees you well, let's say from karma in a sense, but it frees you from feeling the need to attach yourself to life, or to attach yourself to situations, or to attach yourself to ideas and goals and ideals and everything. So that's why I think it's one of the goals of life to be liberated. It's the counter measure to righteousness. So I hope this short presentation, and I know it seems like I'm cutting it short in the explanation or the let's say the philosophy behind this, but it is like righteousness. It is a topic that volumes have been written on it. It's a very immense topic of conversation. So I'm not trying to go into like thousands of years of philosophy on what liberation is. I'm just pointing it out in relation to the 4 goals of life: wealth, pleasure, righteousness, and liberation. And my defining argument about it is that it is not something to be achieved as a particular stage of life. It is something to be achieved in every single moment, simply based on the fact that life, the duration of life, isn't guaranteed. Nobody is guaranteed to have a long life, to say that, okay, I'm going to put off liberation until I am retired. Nobody's guaranteed that. So it doesn't make sense to say that there are 4 stages of life in terms of years. It would be more logical to say that the stages of life, the goals of life, apply to each and every moment and each and every circumstance of life. So this has been my short series of presentations on the 4 goals of life. And like always, I invite you to give me some feedback on Facebook and via our website, sankhyaTV.com. And, you can give me feel free to give me positive or negative feedback on your ideas on the topics that I discuss. Like always, thank you for joining me on Diksha. My name is Omkar, and I'll see you next time.